I believe this is the single biggest change in the Kickstarter platform ever. This is a big change to how Kickstarter has always done business. This will definitely be a game changer for small and large campaigns. So I will be honest, it is the small campaigns that I'm concerned about. This makes me nervous as a veteran crowdfunder, and maybe part of that is the gray in my beard and the old head status. The system that we have right now for creators, it kind of works, or at least we're comfortable with how it works. If I was in charge of Kickstarter, I would basically put my foot down and say, yeah, we are going for the throats of all of the other crowdfunding platforms, right? Like, the time has come where, eating off the back of our campaigns is no longer happening. If you are like me, a creator and a crowdfunder, this is something that will probably impact how you run campaigns in the future. So what are we talking about? Well, this is the sort of late breaking news that Kickstarter will be rolling out late pledge support. Late pledge support. And so for this stream, my goal for this, what I want to do here is I want to cover the announcement that Kickstarter made. We'll look at that announcement. We'll check it out in detail. We'll take a look at an example of late pledge support that is actually already live on Kickstarter, and we'll look at the good, the bad, what we like about it, what we don't like about it, what questions we have about it. I want to identify a bunch of questions. I also want to look at the reaction, the public reaction to this news, and I want to put some context on, how big a deal this actually is. Me personally, I think this is actually a huge deal. And then I want to talk a little bit about the pros and the cons, some of the opportunities that this might create. And I also want to share some of the things that I'm concerned with or I might be fearful of. Whenever you take something that largely most people agree is working and shake it up, there's always the benefit that it blows up in your face. And so I'm curious. I'm going to be really curious in watching this space with a lot of interest. So let's begin. Let's just start by taking a look at what Kickstarter is saying it is doing. So the just released last night, I was from the Kickstarter newsroom, and they say, first look, late pledges on Kickstarter. Now backers have a way to support great projects post-campaign right here on Kickstarter. And I like that they acknowledge that that's what's different about this is right here on Kickstarter, because let's face it, for over a decade now, I believe, backers have been able to support campaigns after the campaign is over using third-party tools like Backerkit. And this is really a shot at that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's see what Kickstarter is saying here. Every project that's launched on Kickstarter since 2009 is a testament to what's possible when creators can tap into community support to bring their ideas to life. Today, we're excited to share a glimpse into the future of supporting creative projects on Kickstarter with a new feature we're introducing, Late Pages. The end of a campaign shouldn't mean the end of support. Whether you've just stumbled upon a project where the funding period has already ended, or you're a creator looking to keep the momentum going, we believe the spirit of support and discovery should continue even after the campaign clock runs out. Worth noting here that has traditionally not been Kickstarter's feeling, right? This is a change in sort of the fundamentals of how Kickstarter works. Nevertheless, they say that's why starting today, yes, this is already live in at least one project instance, we are introducing late pledges to a select group of creators. The late pledges feature allows creators who successfully meet their funding goal. Okay, so this is key here. To allow creators who successfully meet their funding goal to continue collecting pledges after their campaign officially ends. It's our way of keeping the door open for more support, more backers, and more success for the incredible projects that make Kickstarter what it is. What they have not said here is it's their way to keep that door open on their platform and not send money to other platforms like your backer kits, etc. So that is not being said here. So they're not taking shots in here, but I think we all know that that's what that means. While a handful of creators are testing it out, we'll get their feedback, explore the feature's possibilities, refine its functionality, and ensure it's everything our community needs it to be before we roll out to all creators worldwide. All right. We'll come back to this in a sec, but you can see you can actually check out late pledges in action today when you back this table games project from the Master Forge. We'll check that out in a moment. Why late pledges? Often backers come across projects they'd wish they'd known about sooner, and creators find post-campaign buzz they wish they could capitalize on. In the past, creators have turned to third-party services to do this, which means adding extra steps for the creators themselves and their backers. And that is absolutely true. Anyone that has set up a pledge manager with Backerkit or pledge manager from KickTrack or Pledgebox or any of the other options, your own Shopify store, these are all things that you can do and creators have done in the past to capitalize on post-campaign interest and to make sales after the campaign is over. If anyone that has done that knows that it can add a lot of extra steps, and it is no small task to set that up. So Kickstarter continues. Now we are integrating late pledges directly into Kickstarter, erasing the need for third-party players and embedding a streamlined process right where your community is already supporting you. All right. This means creators can continue to offer rewards and engage with and expand their backer community effortlessly, while backers get another shot at supporting projects they believe in post-campaign. With late pledges, we're setting the stage for even more support and even bigger success stories. That's a future we can get behind. And they end this out, coming soon to all creators. We'll be rolling out late pledges to all creators soon, and we'll expand payment methods to include Amex cardholders and Apple Pay users. Okay. Interesting that they are not expanding it to include PayPal. The inclusion of PayPal is one of the key differentiators of some of the other crowdfunding platforms. And it is also one of the advantages of using Backerkit Pledge Manager. And just anecdotally, I've got a Backerkit going right now, and about half of the pledges, after half of the post-launch pledges that are going through are actually people that are checking out with Backerkit or using their using their PayPal funding on Backerkit to pledge. And so that does suggest that there is a lot of value in opening up that as a payment method. So it looks like they're opening up Apple Pay, which I thought was, I believe that's already available. I'm not sure about Amex. And then, so this is key. If you are a creator and you're interested, if you got a project that's live or will be ending soon, or maybe it just ended and you want to get this feature turned on, they do have a sign up form going. It is it's basically done in a form of Qualtrics survey, but it just says, want to be an early bird, drop us your email and you'll be the first to know when late pledge is available for all creators. And so that doesn't sound like it's going to be like you'll necessarily get it before other creators, but you'll get notified when other creators will. And it sounds like they are reaching out to probably some Kickstarter power users or some bigger campaigns to test this out now. They say, we're excited to expand the ways Kickstarter supports creators across their creative journey, not just during their funding period, but also pre-campaign and post-campaign. And we know pre-campaign wise, the big development that Kickstarter rolled out in the last couple of years was pre-launch pages, which have been incredibly effective at getting out backers for day one. And now this is a post-campaign strategy that they are rolling out. Kickstarter says, we're laser focused on providing creators with essential features they need to launch their projects successfully, connect to a community that wants to support them, and if they choose, lay the groundwork for a sustainable business. Stay tuned. A lot more to come, Team Kickstarter. All right, so that's the announcement that Kickstarter made yesterday. And the first thing that came to mind when checking out that announcement is, I believe this is the single biggest change in the Kickstarter platform ever. Now, you might be thinking, well, Tyler, that's a big statement, and clearly they've had a number of big changes over the years. Most recently, the rolling out of add-on support after people asking that for years. That was pretty big. The ability to add images to your rewards and your pledge levels, that was kind of a game changer for a while. But this fundamentally changes one of the core tenets and the core differentiators of Kickstarter from basically every other platform and nearly every other way that business is done online, which was tied into part of the ethos of Kickstarter from the beginning. And that core tenet was that the campaign was the campaign, and you had during the campaign and the campaign only to raise funds on Kickstarter. And that once the campaign was over for that individual project, that transaction is essentially complete. Kickstarter would have a one-to-one, one project launch, one payment, and that's it. That's the end of it. And Kickstarter would not stay open past that window. It is a big thing that they would say in their marketing is that Kickstarter is not a store. It is a sort of campaign and crowdfunding platform, but that time window for doing business on Kickstarter was discrete and distinct and contained to 60 days or less, most commonly 30 days. And one of the things that some of Kickstarter's competitors or platforms that evolved after Kickstarter, or in some cases, in conjunction with Kickstarter, Indiegogo had opportunities where you could do flexible funding campaigns where you didn't necessarily have to raise all the funds in order to get some funds. Like that was an option, and they changed that. Kickstarter hasn't budged on the all or nothing. And other platforms like Indiegogo or Crowdfunder, some of the other crowdfunding platforms that have their Backerkit, for example, their crowdfunding platform, all of those platforms have the ability for you to take pledges after the campaign is over. And Kickstarter, up until this announcement, has never had that. That has always been one of the key differentiators of Kickstarter. And I would argue part of the reason why Kickstarter does have true urgency is the fact that they haven't budged on that at all. All right. But I'm going to, and there's some reason, and there's a part of me that is concerned that this change will have negative downstream effects. The big point that I want to get across is just that this is a big, big change to how Kickstarter has always done business. All right. So in a sec, I want to go and actually take a look at what this looks like right now, this first iteration, because Kickstarter does have this live. But before I do that, I want to just check in on some of the reactions that creators are having to this news before we even dive in seriously. So John from Part Time Comics, he says this is an awesome upgrade. He's excited about it. All right. Now, one of the benefits of doing what I do, running the ComixLaunch Pro program and community, is that when news like this drops, I hear it. I get a little advanced word about it from my community. So I actually was not the first to know about this. Shout out to Joey Oliveira, who brought this to my attention. He posted it in our private community about 17 hours ago after Kickstarter announced it. And the initial reaction to my community is actually pretty positive. We've got Aaron Robolowski says, game changer, about time. David Taylor has some questions about it. It says, given the issues they've had with financial growth, it's amazing Kickstarter's been letting Backerkit steal their lunch for so long by not implementing this feature. It's great to see. Carla says, doesn't this take away from the excitement that a launch creates if people know that they have this option when your campaign is at the risk of not funding? And Rob Multari says they have a lot of improvements to make to their surveys and add-ons and add-on better messaging systems like Launch. So I don't see Backerkit going away anytime soon. So yeah, the discussion is already popping over there. Over on X, looks like, so here's how Kickstarter sold it over on X. They said that their sort of tagline was, no more, I was going to pledge, but your campaign ended messages. No, we'll still get those. Like people will still use those excuses, right? But that is one of the things that this would address, right? Anyone that has launched on Kickstarter has had the experience of beating the drum for 30 days or more on their campaign, feeling like they've been talking about nothing but their Kickstarter campaign, having the campaign come to a close, and then the next day somebody in their family or friends be like, "Hey man, when are you launching that Kickstarter?" And it's like maddening. Now you can be like, "Hey, yeah, it's here it is. Here's the link. Go back today." So that is an option that this will solve. But there's some questions here. It says, Bear says, hopefully this helps the smaller campaigns as much as the big ones. I successfully ran mine and it passed at the final days. Kickstarter replied, they said, this will definitely be a game changer for small and large campaigns. So I will be honest, it is the small campaigns that I'm concerned about. And I'm going to talk about a little bit where some of my concerns lie. But it is good that Kickstarter at least is saying that they're thinking about them. Some questions. Lewis over here says, how late are we talking? Just curious because Kickstarter releases funds shortly after funding. So how would these new pledges be accounted for? Yeah, that is a good question. And it's on my questions list of how is this just would this be an ongoing funding source, or when would when do our late pledges actually collected? Mike Clerkin says this will be a very welcome feature. Once this is in place, please focus on allowing creators to collect shipping and taxes within Kickstarter instead of having to rely on third-party solutions, some of which share backer data. Alongside this, your surveys need to be more flexible. So yeah, Master Animation says, now we're talking, happens every campaign. And so again, trying to see where some conversations are happening just about late pledges, and I'd love to get them going. We have 10 Comics replied to my post about this, said, my first reaction is very good. As a creator, I, of course, want as many avenues for revenue as possible. And as a potential backer, there have been several times I've seen a just concluded campaign and been like, shoot, I meant to back that one. All right. So we can see the reaction. It seems like the consensus has been pretty positive. But what I want to do now is actually, let's take a look at this thing, right? Let's take a look at this thing in action. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm going to that one campaign that Kickstarter pointed out, which is called Masters of Realms. And you can see one of the things that is different about this campaign. Here is an example of a traditional post-campaign project that has ended. So, you know, I recently wrapped up the 10th anniversary CS for Cthulhu hardcover and plush toy campaign, and you'll see what that looks like. Is it has a headline, the subtitle and project description, and then there's that pre-order button that you can edit yourself. It includes who created this project, and it includes all the funding details for that project. And then underneath there's the video and the data and the details. And so the project page after the campaign is over does have a distinct look that is different than a live project. But Master of Realms looks more like a live project than then it's like a hybrid between a live project and a ended project. And you'll see at the very top of the campaign, there is a Kickstarter banner that says this campaign successfully funded on April 16th, but you can still pledge for available rewards. And so Master of Realms, this is a big project, $760,000 raised on a $30,000 goal, over 12,000 backers in the 3D map making tabletop space. This is not a space I am terribly familiar with, but it looks like this is a software product that is to support 3D and 2D map making and your RPG gaming. All right. So one thing that's curious is that I don't see anywhere who is behind this project. So it's sort of like usually you see the project creator right under here at the top of above the fold, and the project creator has just disappeared on this one, which is interesting. But there is a button that says back this project, which is the same button that, and it's in the same place that the green back button is on, here's an example of a live project. So it's in the same place. The only difference is there is no ticking clock, or there's no days or hours to go countdown going on. It is just the time element is removed. And so it just says back this project. You still also do have the ability to save the project. I'm not sure what that would do in the case of a post launch. It says that they send email notifications 48 hours before project ends to saved or followed projects. Not sure what following a project after it has ended actually does, if anything. That would go on my questions list. But when you click back this project, it pulls up your reward page, and you basically have a limited number of rewards. What's not clear is this the same set of rewards that was available when the campaign was live? Is this a subset of those? I don't have access to the back end. So also on my questions list is, are you setting up, is this just carrying over everything that was on your existing campaign? Do you have to set them up special? Is it a hybrid of that? Is it a toggle? You can select which ones are available post-launch or not. But for the case of this campaign, it looks like they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different rewards available. And when you click on rewards and you hit the pledge button, you then still have the option to add on add-ons. So there's a limited add-on menu here. Again, it's not clear how many of those add-ons get to how those add-ons actually work, or whether or not you have to separate which add-ons are available, or if just all your add-ons would be available. When you hit continue, it looks like, I'm not going to actually pledge to this because I don't want to be charged, because I don't necessarily understand this project, but there's the same rewards aren't guaranteed and backing means support over here. But my guess is that this card would be charged instantly, but I am not actually sure about that. And I'm not going to do the experiment to test that out. But that's another question that I have just for this is like, okay, for post-launch late pledges, are those charged instantly? Are those, and another question is that Kickstarter traditionally has been set up to roll up pledges and issue one big payment to creators. All right. And so how is this going to work in the late pledges? Are they now, are all late pledges going to get, and late pledges that come in after they've made that first bulk payment from the campaign, are those going to be completed one at a time? Or will Kickstarter do some sort of thing where they will batch up 2 weeks worth of late pledges and then release those in a larger chunk? Or is it just going to be, are they charged and that those funds distributed to you after Kickstarter takes its cut? All of that is to TBD. FAQs, I'm assuming that these late pledges are also it's going to be the same deal in terms of the amount that Kickstarter takes versus, and the amount that for credit card charges, although I'm not really sure. We will see how that works out. So those are some of the questions that I have. The big thing that I want to point out, okay, is that when we're talking late pledges, all right, if you compare what this looks like in terms of late pledges to what a late pledge looks like if you are looking at Backerkit, the ability to really make clear pledge levels or showcase your items with larger images and details, Kickstarter, their rewards page still leaves a lot to be desired in terms of just visual appeal. And so another question that I'd have is, is this page good enough compared to some of the other post-launch pledge collection options from a conversion and information and just visual attractiveness to really compete. So that's definitely something that I'm interested in. All right. So some of the questions that I had sort of as I've digged in this is like, who is this available for? And is this only for successful Kickstarter campaigns that hit their funding goal? And it seems like at least of right now, that element is not changing, that this is an option that is going to be available for the successful Kickstarter campaigns, but not necessarily, but Kickstarter is not saying, yeah, now you have the ability to keep even longer running campaigns that did not hit their funding goal. This is not an ability for those campaigns that aren't successful to keep taking money on Kickstarter or to keep taking pledges on Kickstarter. I believe in order to have this turned on, you will have to have had a successful Kickstarter. All right. So that, and just for the record, I think that's good. I don't believe that. I believe that if you're unable to hit your mark on Kickstarter with that all or nothing urgency, then you had a miscalculation. Either your product needs to be enhanced, your goal needs to be rethought out, or your community building and your audience engagement needs to be focused on before you come back to the campaign. I don't think just extending the campaign for an additional couple of weeks or a month is going to actually do much to correct the issues that you had. We know statistically that only a tiny percent of Kickstarter projects get close to funding but don't fund. Usually, the vast majority of projects that fail to fund miss the mark by a lot, and that suggests that they have more work to do. And the issue really isn't, oh, we just needed a little bit of extra time. So I think that's good. I think doing something like where any campaign, regardless of how they did, can open up late pledges and collect money. I think that actually fundamentally breaks a lot of what Kickstarter has done successfully and makes it unique. All right. So I want to share some of my thoughts on how this is going to play out and whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing. Let's start with sort of the glass full or the glass half full or even totally full. What are some pros of Kickstarter doing this? Let's look at this from Kickstarter's perspective, right? And we have to do that, right? My usual perspective, my primary perspective, just so you know, is as a creator. All right. Even though I've funded hundreds and hundreds of Kickstarter campaigns as a backer, and I am an avid fan of the crowdfunding platforms and crowdfunding in general, and I love crowdfunding creators, and I'm a huge fan of independent crowdfunded comics. My primary lens that I put on is that of a creator, and I'm most interested and most concerned in how this development is going to affect creators like myself and creators like the hundreds and hundreds of creators that I work with inside of ComixLaunch Pro to help them get their projects crowdfunded and out into the world. And so that's my primary lens of looking at it. But it's also important to look at this from the backer's perspective. And I think also important to look at it from the Kickstarter perspective. And I think we don't spend a lot of time, in Kickstarter's business and thinking about the health of their own business. But one of the things, and I haven't really talked about this on the show much, and I haven't dove into it because, it's kind of a big topic, but I'll just touch on it. Kickstarter as a business has been, it's a tech company that has pretty stable growth and pretty stable sales. It is not a tech company that is still experiencing hockey stick growth and has massive enthusiasm about, to the moon and year over year projections of growing 20, 30, 40, 50% and just this accelerating growth. It's not like a tech bubble type stock. Or a tech bubble type company. It is actually a pretty stable, consistent revenue generator, but not an explosive growth company. And Kickstarter really only has one primary mechanism of raising funds. They take 5% of the funding raised of successful campaigns. They are not a company like Apple that does devices and streamings and cloud services and other things. They have really one revenue generator, and that is they take a percentage of successful projects. And so one of the things that Kickstarter sticking with that over the years and not diversifying their revenue streams or having verticals where they have additional ways that they can raise revenue is from a investment standpoint, and it does make, I think, it a little bit difficult for them to get the kinds of massive investments that a lot of tech companies have gotten over the years. And it was sort of, there was an article recently that revealed, hey, remember a couple years ago when Kickstarter put out that weird blockchain announcement? What and then, fast forward till today and they've done nothing on that. What the heck was that all about? The article that I read suggested what that was all about was they were basically given, or their higher ups were given, a lot of money to make that announcement in the form of a big investment from, from a company. And I don't have all the details in front of me, but it was basically a play of, we've got these blockchain companies that are being fueled by speculator dollars, and they currently were having access to more money than they knew what to do with. But one thing they didn't have was a lot of like practical implications and practical vouching from legitimate companies. And so the idea of a company like Kickstarter announcing that they would be getting into this space in some way would be of value to those companies. And as a result, like, it was a financial play for a company like Kickstarter that actually didn't have a lot of means of attracting new investments and didn't have other revenue streams. So it's clear. And what's also clear is that over the past decade plus, the Kickstarter / crowdfunding economy is significant. There are a number of companies out there that have been able to build a successful company on the back of the platform that Kickstarter has built. Backerkit is probably the most known of those, and Backerkit exists because to fill a void that Kickstarter decidedly did not serve, right? Kickstarter, since its very beginning, has decided that once the campaign was over and once they pay the creators their funding that they raised during the campaign, like, that's the end of that transaction. If you want to do more business with Kickstarter, you have to launch a new project. And so that opened the door for companies like Backerkit to create products to solve solutions for Kickstarter's customers that Kickstarter was not interested in solving. And so we see Backerkit has done things like, hey, you can use us to send a much more enhanced survey than the survey that Kickstarter allows, and a survey that will let you upsell your backers and ask really strategic questions that get backers to buy more things, and you can show an add-on menu, or you can even add new things after the campaign is over that your backers might be interested in backing. You can use us to collect pledges that Kickstarter wasn't unable to collect. You can use us to use different funding sources such as PayPal or maybe American Express or other credit card companies that Kickstarter was not in the past supporting. And all of those things became very valuable to crowdfunders, to the point where, for me personally, there's one thing that I know, and look, I actually haven't done this tally. I know exactly how much funding I've raised on Kickstarter in total since I've been launching in 2012, well over $1.25 million on Kickstarter. But I've probably raised another $100,000 or $200,000 in funding on using pledge manager tools after the campaign is over. It's a pretty consistent, anywhere from 10 to 20% of extra funding that gets raised using tools like Backerkit crowdfunding when you can use some of the strategies that work over there. And that's a significant amount of money. Backerkit's a big company, and big enough where Backerkit was able to do some things to start to encroach into Kickstarter's world. And so this development here was essentially a response, maybe, or a response that I sort of foresaw when a couple years ago Backerkit announced that they would be opening their own crowdfunding platform. They would not be limiting themselves just to the projects that are launching, just to being serving the back end of Kickstarter. They would actually be opening a crowdfunding platform of their own. And they've done that. And they've been able to woo and pull over a number of highly successful game projects in particular. I will say most of the comic book related projects that I have seen that have launched on Backerkit do not perform as well as they have traditionally performed for those same creators when they launch projects on Kickstarter. And oftentimes what I end up seeing is people that they might launch a project on Backerkit crowdfunding, see how it does, but then launch a very similar project shortly after that Backerkit crowdfunding ends over on Kickstarter. Highlight to Laguna Studios and how they're working, because I've seen them do that a few times where they just mirror the project they launched on Backerkit crowdfunding and then launch the same project on Kickstarter shortly after and raise additional funding because they don't want to give up on that Kickstarter audience. And Kickstarter still today is probably has, at least 5 times, if not significantly more traffic than Backerkit does. So I guess this is not surprising then that Kickstarter, in need of opening up additional revenue streams, or as any company does, usually in order to grow, you got to keep growing. They recognize that late pledges is actually a significant source of revenue for companies like Backerkit or Pledge Manager from KickTrack or Pledgebox or any of the other options that you have. And Kickstarter says, why are we closing ourselves off to that source of revenue? And so that's really what late pledges is going to do. And potentially, from Kickstarter's business, this could be a lucrative post-launch option for them. This Master of Realms project that they're exempling. I mean, I've been seeing this thing continue to tick up as I've been checking it in, right? It keeps going up. So this is all funding, like all of this funding that is happening today. And I'm not sure where did it end. So this is another interesting thing about the way these post-launch projects are working is, or these post-launch late pledges, is the total number of backers and the total funding keeps going up. So it's not, I can't actually see here. I could pull up KickTrack or something else and plug this in, but I can't actually see where this campaign ended up. Maybe I can do that in the updates. Yeah. So project funds successfully, 12,433 backers. So that's weird. So this might be a little bit buggy because I've seen this continue to go up, and this is still showing project funds successfully. This dynamic on the Kickstarter updates from yesterday is still is dynamically updating even as new pledges come in today. So there's definitely some bugs and some kinks that need to be worked out, and it's just some like transparency stuff that needs to be worked out. So anyway, this is interesting to just see how late pledges is working in action. But from Kickstarter standpoint, I can see how this makes sense to them. From a backer standpoint, I do know that this probably makes a lot of sense if you are a backer. The idea that you missed out on a project, you discover the project on Kickstarter, the ability to find a project or hear about a project, click on it, and still support it after the campaign is over. That presumably is a good thing. I do know some backers do not necessarily want to have to learn multiple different platforms in order to support a project. And I know to the extent that this late pledge feature means that creators will no longer be setting up Backerkit or pledge managers or post launch things. It really will simplify things for backers potentially. So that is a pro for backers. Now let's look at this from the creator's perspective. Now I work with a lot of creators that only do the Kickstarter survey. All right. And so they just work with Kickstarter and they do not use a post campaign manager like Backerkit. And part of that is because of a cost perspective. And they understand that for most creators, Backerkit charges around 2% of your total raise on Kickstarter in order to use their pledge manager and their survey. Again, I said historically for me, most of the campaigns that I've launched end up raising additional 10 to 20 after the campaign is over. So even if I'm paying 2% to Backerkit of the campaign raised, I end up coming out ahead anywhere from 8 to 18% by using Backerkit surveys and using their tools after the campaign is over. So that's a great deal for me. But for some creators, especially if they don't have a big backlist or don't have a lot of add-on strategies that they can use when they send out their Backerkit surveys, for them, the idea of, after the campaign is over, then having a 2% bill, let's say they raised $10,000. Well, that's $200 that you've got to spend to go use Backerkit when the Kickstarter survey is absolutely free, right? So I work with a lot of creators that by default do not use Backerkit or pledge managers or other tools after the campaign is over, simply because they don't want to pay for them. And so it can be argued that this is good for those backers because they're not missing out on late pledges that they might otherwise be missing out on. Another advantage is that we know that in general tends to convert better than most people's individual stores and online stores and things like that. If backers are already have their credit card on file on Kickstarter, it's a couple of clicks. They don't have to leave the platform that is Kickstarter. It's a trusted platform. And so presumably if you have a back the project on Kickstarter button versus a miss the Kickstarter, go click here and buy this issue at my store or what have you, presumably the Kickstarter is going to convert better than sending people elsewhere. All right. And so that is something that could benefit creators. All right. Now, what about for creators like myself or some of the bigger crowdfunders out there, the more experienced crowdfunders out there, the people that have a big backlist, publishers that have a big backlist? What's good about this versus those pledge managers? So even if you're like myself, or, I've talked to creators like Charlie Stickney. I know he does a lot of business on Backerkit. Rob Multari. Usually Backerkits are pretty reliable revenue streams post-launch. But one of the things that we all know is that it is not it's not like flipping on a switch to get your Kickstarter synced up with Backerkit. Yes, Backerkit is integrated and they will pull in a lot of information from your Kickstarter and they have a streamlined process to set it up. But for large campaigns, when you have a lot of items, a big backlist, or if you're going to actually do some of the techniques that I teach in my post-launch profits program, for example, it takes some time to set it up so that you're actually turning your post-launch survey into a add-on generating, revenue generating sales machine. And so I might spend 2 or 3 5-hour days, maybe not that much, depending upon the campaign. There's some of my bigger campaigns, it might take that long, but I might spend 10 hours setting up a Backerkit. And even the smallest Backerkit is going to take a couple of hours, even if I'm copying over from past Backerkit campaigns and things like that. So the idea that you could eliminate that and do it all on Kickstarter and still take those late pledges and still have that experience and make it good. And if it is, because it's integrated with Kickstarter, it's going to be more of a turnkey solution, and easy to either copy a few pledge levels over or turn some things on and off, but you're not recreating an entire campaign over on a different platform like Backerkit and getting two different platforms to talk to one another, and then also having to manage customer issues and getting them from one to the other, and dealing with, oh, hey, my Backerkit isn't syncing with my Kickstarter. Like, there's a lot of headaches potentially that this could solve if done really well. And so that would all be on the pros side. Okay. So that's the glass half full, but I will be honest, this makes me nervous as a veteran crowdfunder. And maybe part of that is the gray in my beard and the old hat, old head status. Part of it might be like, ooh, like maybe, as you get older, it is often said you get a little bit more conservative, maybe not always with your political views, but with how you want the world to work. And there is a sense that the system that we have right now for creators, at least in my category or whatever would say, I do think it kind of works, or at least we're comfortable with how it works. The idea that there is the crowdfunding phase that you do on Kickstarter, which is the #1 crowdfunding platform in the world, at least for many of the categories, comics being one of them. You do a tight 30-day focused campaign on that platform, and you put your all into those 30 days and try to do in those 30 days, maximize as much funding as you can on that platform, and put all your messaging around the 30 days, the tight window of here's when it launches, here's when it ends. There's so much power that comes into that. And even though over the past couple of years, we've seen that one of the trends is that first couple of days tend to be even bigger than ever, but the end of the campaign, we aren't seeing the same bump that we used to see. What I can say is that I do worry that if late pledges become a thing and it is just accepted and known that after the campaign is over, nothing actually happens. There's no moment when you're either in or you're out. How is that going to the urgency that once was you were either a part of the Kickstarter or you weren't? I worry what happens when that goes away. Are those final days of support going to actually be the same? Will the ticking clock become meaningless if once it goes away, the clock goes away, but the button doesn't? So I am concerned about that breaking one of the fundamental ways that Kickstarter has always worked, and one of the psychological reasons that has always worked. There's a marketing principle that people buy, or people make a decision when they are faced with losing something. It's sort of a negative way about human behavior, but it's actually true. How many people stop smoking when they realize that they've got, they're battling cancer and they're in danger of, they're finally like faced with the reality of in danger of losing their lives? How many people's marriages finally get taken serious when, somebody slaps some divorce papers on the table and is like, this needs to get signed. And then all of a sudden people start taking action. How many applications for jobs or schooling come in on the very last day of application enrollment? Usually it is as many as on the first day of enrollment. But when that goes away, it's hard to think that that's not going to have an effect. And this is something that Kickstarter for years and years just didn't muck with. And I am somewhat concerned about what happens when they muck with that. Also, for those of us that have been doing this for a while, we kind of have our messaging down, and those final, in the final day, the countdown, those emails, we will lean into that urgency of support. And can you really lean in that much or that hard when the second the campaign ends, the button just doesn't change at all, and the only thing that goes away is that ticking clock? I don't know. I don't know if that is like are we going to feel in our marketing, are we as a result going to take a step back and not put as much effort into it? So that's one of the core issues that and concerns that I have with this. The second core issue that I have, and we talked in the pros about how this could help the little guy who maybe felt like they couldn't afford a pledge manager. Is this going to hurt the little guy? And the reason I say this is because one of the most awesome things about the Kickstarter platform is that compared to every other sales channel place online, the young or the independent or the small guy has as close to a fair shake at getting attention as any other platform there is, and probably more in most cases. And there is not the first mover or best seller advantage that persists. That is the case on many other platforms. If you go to buy a children's book on Amazon, for example, you're not competing with the 200 or 300 other children's books that are also going on and launching for sale this month. No, in fact, you're probably not losing anything to them. You're competing with Dr. Seuss, and you're competing with the best of the best that has ever been published on a platform like Amazon. But on Kickstarter, up until this announcement, when you launch, your only competition or your for sales is in comics 200 to almost 300 projects that are live with you right then. And in that way, the amazing $500,000 project that Brian Pulido launched last month, for example, but is now ended. Well, the $1,000 goal project from a first-time webcomic creator trying to rally their small but mighty fan base out, that project, in terms of sales generating possibility and potential, is superior to that massive Brian Pulido project that launched but is now ended. I am worried that the dollars that get spent on Kickstarter will just continue to go to those projects that have already proved that they are the best of the best, that they have big audiences for, that they are dominating. And the example of this that exists currently is Indiegogo In Demand. And honestly, from a navigation standpoint and a searchability standpoint and a discoverability standpoint, I believe that Indiegogo has been a broken platform for a long time. When you navigate around Indiegogo, especially in the comics category, it's often hard to tell what projects are actually live and what projects are in demand and what projects are have been, are just still collecting funding from, months or even years in some cases. And so I hope that the discoverability doesn't get affected. And now, when I took a quick look at Kickstarter's discoverability for the master, like what I was interested in was just looking at the Masters of Realms project. That is their example of a late backer collecting project right now. And I went and I tried to find it in their search. And if you use the filter of live projects, it actually right now it doesn't show up. It will show up in successful projects, but it doesn't show up in live projects. So that's good. But if that goes away, or if or if projects that are taking late pledges are still considered or searchable as live projects, then I can't, like, it won't be, fast forward 6 months from now, and there'll be over 1,000 live comic projects, or projects that look like live, or over 1,000 comic projects that are still collecting money on Kickstarter versus 200, or max 300 in some of the busiest months. And so that is something that I'd be really worried about, that changes just the visibility of projects on Kickstarter. So that's something that I'm worried about. All right. A third thing that I am concerned about, or at least maybe I'm not concerned about, because I will, like, as of right now, with what I see from what Kickstarter is doing, I will probably still invest in Backerkit, in a Backerkit pledge manager, or a post-launch pledge manager that is optimized to make sales after the campaign is over. And one thing that Backerkit really understands is that the survey and sending the survey is one of the strongest opportunities to raise additional funds. And so if Kickstarter does not pair this late pledge thing with a survey overhaul that is optimized to make post-campaign sales, then it is still not a superior solution to what exists elsewhere. And so I personally, like, enjoy the process, and from a business standpoint, actually like the ability to launch the Kickstarter, get the Kickstarter chunk of funding, have a little bit of a space, and then launch the Backerkit survey, have a surge of anywhere from 10 to 20% extra funding generated from that survey, and then also point audience or to the pre-orders so that can get piled into that. Like, I actually like breaking it up into a couple of different funding events. The Backerkit survey, as I've said, has a number of features, and it's something that, much like Kickstarter, has been refined over the years to optimize sales during a campaign. Well, the Backerkit survey has been refined with thousands and thousands of campaigns and feedback and use, so that it is really a revenue generating machine in the way that Kickstarter, because they're not collecting any money after the campaign is over, traditionally, they never really had to invest. Like, it made no sense for Kickstarter to invest much time at all into their survey, because they have no stake in the survey generating money. Now, when they're breaking this seal, they now have a stake in post-campaign funds raised. So the first order of business for Kickstarter would be a rapid overhaul of the Kickstarter survey and optimize it so that it can do things like the Backerkit survey can do, to put specialized questions in front of your certain pledge levels, to invite them with one click to upgrade pledges when they might not have upgraded them already. Put a really nice designed add-on menu in front of backers at checkout for one last opportunity to upgrade their pledges, and also recover pledges that might not have been collected during the Kickstarter. So that's another question that I will have for this, is what is the implication for late pledges, for collecting pledges from backers who erred during the Kickstarter? So that, I'm going to put that in the pro column, because, for example, like right now, I just wrapped up that 10th anniversary campaign. I think we had 42 backers whose pledges erred. Now, usually I can recover a good chunk of those using Backerkit after the campaign is over. A good chunk of those is just like, they didn't update their credit card in time. They only had 7 days. And so if Kickstarter can help recover those and not have to use a pledge manager to recover those pledges, like, that's a good thing. But now I'm worried about if you are still using Kickstarter and another platform. I'm worried about those things talking to each other and communicating. And there was something clean about the Kickstarter ending, and that's the end of the Kickstarter. And then if you're going to do anything else, you've got to do it on another platform. It was easy to keep track of things. And I guess that is maybe the fourth thing that I'm concerned about, is just, is this going to complicate fulfillment if orders are just perpetually open? And is like, when is their ability to lock down orders? How is that going to work? Because at some point, there does come a time where you need to be able to say, okay, this is the pool of backers that I'm trying to fulfill. And these are the pledge levels, these are the order groups, and I just need to be able to knock them off. I need to be able to keep track that something is shipped. I need to be able to not confuse. And if orders are still coming in or could be coming in, that feeling, that confidence that you're not that you're not missing orders, or that you're checking orders off. Backerkit has a, over time, like, they've dealt with this. They have a detailed process where, if you actually look inside a Backerkit, if you look inside a Backerkit management or pledge manager thing, you'd actually can see, like, there's like 5 different stages where, like, here's the order, here the order's been locked, the order's been paid for, and the credit card has been cleared. Then the order is marked as address locked, and then the order is ready for shipping. Like, Kickstarter doesn't have all those different levels. And so this was also going to require an overhaul, potentially, of Kickstarter's backer pledge management system, which, I'll be honest, is probably in need of an overhaul as well. Jessica says, so true about surveys, Backerkit, and fulfillment. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And, you know, the, I guess the question that I have is Kickstarter doing this as a half measure, or are they going to go all the way with this? Are they truly going to, like, if I was in charge of Kickstarter, and I would not dip my toes in this, I would also not be cheeky with this. I would basically put my foot down and say, yeah, we are going for the throats of all of the other crowdfunding platforms, right? Like, or we are basically, like, the time has come where, eating off the back of our campaigns is no longer happening. We are going to be the full service campaign for creators, and the only one that they need. And so we are going to have a best in class survey. We are going to have a best in class post campaign, pre-order option. We are going to have and integrate and have a best in class pledge management, so that at every level of the fulfillment process, you can do all of that and manage that seamlessly inside of Kickstarter, even to the point of you can, purchase your postage through us, right? And that's going to be a new source of revenue for them, right? Like, don't do it half measures, right? Because but honestly, that is one of the things that I'm worried about here. And this is something that the tech world is pretty common. Forgive my language, but it's sort of like I think the word in tech is the enshittification of tools, where, so many tech tools, or so many websites start out and they do one thing really, really well, but that's all they do. But they realize that if that's all they do, ultimately there's going to be a level, a cap at how much they can grow, what audiences they can serve, how much funding they can raise. And so what do? Well, let's add features, and let's add more features, and let's add more features. And before you know it, and let's, and lately, you've been seeing, like, every tool that you use is now like, oh yeah, by the way, we are also AI driven or AI supported. And we have, these AI features for things that, like, you don't need to add AI to this. You're a checklist. Like, you're a checklist software piece. Like, don't tell me how you're adding all of these features, right? But such that, like, Twitter now, like, it used to be one thing. Now it is very much trying to become all of the things. And, like, and before you know it, all of the platforms are supporting all of the use cases. But as someone that worked in software for many years, like, you can't do everything well. And if you're not committed to doing everything at a superior level, it ends up resulting in less than ideal user experiences. And so we've probably seen that happen with so many of the tools that we've used where, I mean, there's a lot of tools from Facebook ads to the Twitter platforms to social media, Facebook groups, social media, Facebook pages, like so many tools out there that used to be really good and really simple and really straightforward, and now are just not, because they've added so much to it. And so if you're gonna do this Kickstarter, you gotta be committed to go all the way with it. Yeah, Jessica says, if they had what Backerkit offers when they started, I would have just used Kickstarter. These other services have fees, so they add features. Will they add fees? Will it get complicated? So that this is, and I'm going to add that, Jessica, good questions that I want to add to my list of questions that I have about this is, how is Kickstarter going to use this as make another fundamental change to how their platform has worked, where they have very, very simple use case for creators. Hey, you're going to launch a campaign. We're going to take 5% of what you raise, and that's it. And very simple, right? But I have seen that Kickstarter has some opportunities where you can actually, speak to some of their campaign specialists. I'm wondering if that's going to be a paid opportunity for them that they're looking into. Are they going to change their fee structures on post-campaign launch raises? Would they do something like Backerkit has done, where they, all right, yeah, you can buy postage through Kickstarter, but we're going to take a little bit of a cut of what you spend. Kickstarter, it seemed like, and this is kind of a curious move, because it seemed like the direction that Kickstarter was going was to, instead of doing this stuff themselves, to lean into partnerships. And so we saw that Kickstarter last year announced that they were partnering and making an official integration and partnership with Pledge Manager from KickTrack to do enhanced surveys, and to do take post-campaign pledges, and have that integrate even a little bit better than what Backerkit can do. That's at least what the announcement sounded like. This seems like I mean, if I was Pledge Manager, like, this is like the worst news ever, right? Because that integration was probably the best thing that ever happened to them, and that kind of visibility. So I'm curious if the Pledge Manager Kickstarter integration from Kickstarter's point of view wasn't as successful as they were hoping, or they just decided, hey, you know what? Nobody needs to eat off the back of us. And so that's interesting. But Kickstarter has other integrations, like Jellup is someone that they announced as like an official advertising platform partner that they recognize. But will this last? I mean, Kickstarter has a tremendous amount of like building a Facebook ads agency is not a tremendous undertaking for people that have this kind of experience. Is that some area that Kickstarter is just going to say, hey, or will we see Kickstarter do what Amazon does, where you can pay for priority placement? And I could see that being something that gets some significant backlash. But if this is a sign that Kickstarter is looking avidly at additional revenue streams, it's hard to set, like, it would be hard to be working at Kickstarter right now and not look at what Amazon does or the App Store does, or other platforms, and say, we are leaving lots of money on the table from our current customers by not letting them give us more money so that they get better placement in the ad feed. This is something I haven't even thought of, that's just coming to mind. But I guess that's the sort of fifth big thing, is like, what are the ripple effects of this decision going to happen, right? Like, is this a clear sign that Kickstarter is trying to raise more money? And thus, while this thing we all like, is there going to be something on the back end, such as Kickstarter ads, where there's certain placements that you can buy to put yourself in front of more people on the Kickstarter platform, given how how powerful the Kickstarter platform is, how big the Kickstarter platform is in terms of driving new and discoverability. All right. Or, is this going to be, is this actually, as I sort of said in my clickbaity title, like, is this a shot fired in the crowdfunding wars? And is Kickstarter going to, do something like, hey, we are now in the pledge manager or in the late pledge game. So those integrations that we've supported with our competitors in this game, we're not going to really support those anymore. Or, and now to actually bring Kickstarter into Backerkit, well, that's going to actually, you're going to have to do that manually or something like that, right? Like if we're being cutthroat, if we're trying to win, if we're trying to put the other person out of business, like, what are the advantages of Kickstarter doing this and supporting Backerkit as well as they have? Does this, or and is the next target for Kickstarter going to be Backerkit launch, right? Because Backerkit launch has become, for most veteran Kickstarter creators, one of their most essential tools during crowdfunding. I had a creator who has a project that's live right now. It's about around a 10 grand in funding raised, and wasn't able to get his Backerkit launch set up and integrated properly before the launch. Just did it 10 days in. So his campaign's already been running, sort of hit dead zone, turns Backerkit launch on, sends his first Backerkit launch message, and gets an extra $700 like instantaneously. So Backerkit launch is a tremendous product from Backerkit, very powerful for crowdfunders. Is that next on Kickstarter's target list? And or would they potentially stop supporting Backerkit's ability to integrate with and pull data and track with Kickstarter? So these are just a lot of the sort of, again, this is an instant reaction from me, a lot of the things that I will be watching, interested in. I'm someone that I teach creators how to launch on Kickstarter. I spend a big portion of my waking and working hours thinking about what makes crowdfunding work, what makes Kickstarter the best place to launch for 21st century creators, and trying to read the tea leaves about where this is going. And then when I'm not helping other creators or working through these ideas or talking about this stuff, I'm trying to put them into practice for myself and my own crowdfunding efforts for Comics Tribe Publishing. So yeah, this is something that I think about really deeply, and I'm interested in, and I try to keep tabs on. And so really the goal here was to spread this word and to get people discussing this and to think really deeply. And I hope the people at Kickstarter are thinking really deeply about the ramifications of this, what this means, where this could be taking things, and that they're weighing all of those things. Now, again, over the course of the last 14 years, I've actually, high praise for the folks at Kickstarter and what they've done and what they've meant to not just myself, but the entire comics community, the entire creator community, crowdfunding community, etc. So I have pretty good faith that they generally will do the right thing, but it's a faith that is not without questions and concerns. And so I hope that a lot of creators that are participating in this beta test will give them some good feedback about it, and we'll share some of these concerns that I've raised and some more with Kickstarter. And I hope this is something that we can continue to look at, discuss, try to find the best possible version of this that will help the most amount of creators and will hurt the least amount. And that is sort of where I'm going to leave this now. But definitely did not expect to wake up to this morning.